The night it all changed. The rain started before sunset. Soft at first, just a mist over the city. By the time I left the office, it had become that steady, endless curtain of water that makes everything feel muted, distant, like the world is happening behind glass. Our apartment was on the 6th floor of a gray building, overlooking a narrow street. You could always hear the hum of traffic below, the occasional siren, the hiss of buses braking at the corner. Home used to feel like a refuge from all of that. That night, it felt like a waiting room. I remember how my key stuck for half a second in the lock, how I jiggled it, whispered, "Come on," like the door could hear me. Stupid detail, but that moment has replayed in my mind 1,000 times. Because after it opened, nothing in my life fit the way it had before. The apartment smelled like overbrewed coffee and perfume, not her usual light floral scent, but something thicker, sharper. There was a single plate in the sink, a fork half-rinsed, water still beating on the metal. The living room lamp was on, casting that warm, yellow circle over the couch we'd picked together 2 years earlier. She wasn't there. Lena. My voice sounded wrong in the quiet, too loud and too hopeful at the same time. We had been married for almost 7 years, long enough for the wild edges of love to soften into something quieter, shared grocery lists. Sunday morning coffee, arguments about nothing that always ended with one of us laughing first. But in the last few months, something had shifted. It wasn't a dramatic fight or a big confession. It was distance, subtle, creeping distance. Work dinners that ran later, phones turned face down on the table. A new password she said was for security. The way she seemed, absent, even when she was sitting right next to me, scrolling, saying she was just tired. I chose not to make a big deal out of it. That's what I told myself. Don't be dramatic. Everyone goes through phases. You're overthinking. The thing about denial is that it feels a lot like patience, right up until it doesn't. I dropped my bag by the door, slipped off my shoes, listening. No shower running, no faint sound of her humming to some playlist in the kitchen, just the rain hitting the window and a distant horn from the street. On the dining table there were 2 wine glasses. One had a faint lipstick mark, the other didn't. I stared at them for a long time, long enough that the city outside shifted from gray to almost black. Long enough for that first cold trickle of realization to slide down my spine. 2 glasses. My brain started laying out possibilities like cards in a row. Her sister dropping by, a coworker, the neighbor from upstairs. Harmless explanations. I picked up the glass with no lipstick and brought it to my nose. The wine was still fresh. She hadn't been gone long. The couch cushions looked slightly disturbed. Her throw blanket crumpled at one end. Her favorite mug on the coffee table, ring of coffee dried halfway down. My heart was beating too fast for such a quiet room. I remember walking to the bedroom as if I were trying not to wake someone. The door was halfway closed. I pushed it gently. The bed was made, tucked corners, smooth surface. Lena never made it that perfectly. Her closet door was ajar. Inside, the dress she'd worn on our anniversary a year ago was gone from its hanger. The red one she'd said made her feel too much, but I'd told her she looked like the version of herself the world didn't get to see enough. I checked the dresser. Some of her underwear was missing, the matching sets she usually saved for special occasions. I could feel my throat tighten. I pulled out my phone and checked our messages. Her last text from an hour ago, "Working late, don't wait up, love you." Period at the end. She only added a period when she was lying. Ridiculous, the tiny things we noticed too late. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom for I don't know how long. The mirror across from the bed reflected a man I barely recognized. Same dark hair starting to show a few strands of gray at the temples, same tired brown eyes, but there was something hollow in them now, like someone had opened a door behind them and let all the light out. My chest hurt. Not metaphorically, physically, a slow, tight ache spreading outwards. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband, the one who checks phones, who counts wine glasses, but my hands moved on their own. Her laptop was on the small desk by the window, lid closed. We had always known each other's passwords. Over the years, that habit had faded, not because we were hiding anything, at least that's what I believed, but because it felt unnecessary. We were adults, we trusted each other. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For a second, I thought about walking away, just stepping back, breathing, giving her the benefit of the doubt. Then the image of the 2 glasses flashed again in my mind. 2 empty bowls on a table where there should have been one. I opened it, the password hint popped up. First date, it stung. She hadn't changed it. I typed it in. It unlocked. The email icon showed 3 unread messages. So did the messaging app she'd started using last year, the one with disappearing texts. I clicked it. No conversations. Empty, of course, but there is always a place where people forget to clean up. The cloud, the backups, the synced notifications. In the corner, a small icon showed synced devices 2. I clicked view. Her phone and another device, not mine. My hands trembled as I navigated through menus, searching for any trace, any breadcrumb. Something in me felt detached, watching myself from the outside, like I was observing a character in a story making all the wrong choices. Then I saw it, a preview of a deleted photo, still stored in a hidden backup folder. Just a thumbnail, two people at a bar, her profile unmistakable, laughing at someone out of frame, a man's hand on her waist, not mine. I clicked. The full image loaded slowly, as if the universe wanted to stretch out the moment. Rain streaks on the window behind them, soft, dim light, her hair tied back the way she always did when she wanted to feel pretty without looking like she'd tried too hard. His face wasn't fully visible. Mostly jawline, stubble, the hint of a smile directed at her. His body was turned into her space like he already belonged there. Someone else had taken the picture, someone who thought they were capturing a cute moment between lovers. The date stamp was from last week, the night she'd told me she was so exhausted I might just crash at my desk. My knees felt weak. I sat down on the edge of the bed, still clutching the laptop. There's a second when you first see proof like that, when your mind tries to reshape the truth. Maybe it's old, maybe it's not what it looks like, maybe. Then the lies collapse under their own weight. A notification popped up in the corner of the screen. Her name, a message preview from an unsaved number. Just got home. He doesn't suspect a thing. I'll call you in a bit. The room went silent. Even the rain outside seemed to muffle itself. That was me. The phone on the table buzzed a moment later. Her name lit up my screen. Hey, I'm still at the office. Sorry, it's been insane. You okay? My thumb hovered over the answer button. I stared at the photo on the screen and the message on my phone, both of them burning into me, carving a new shape into the life I thought I had. For a long time, I didn't move. Then, with my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, I finally answered the call and said very quietly, "Where are you, Lena?" She paused just half a second, long enough. "I told you," she said, her voice clipped at the edges. "I'm at the office. We're still working on the quarterly report. Why? Is everything okay?" The rain filled the spaces between her words. I stared at the photo on the laptop screen, then at the message preview, then at the bedroom door. It felt like the apartment itself was watching me, holding its breath. "Yeah," I heard myself say, "just checking." Coward, the word echoed in my head, but it wasn't that simple. It felt like standing on a cliff edge in the dark. One wrong step and everything that still looked solid would fall away. She went on about some fake deadline and I let her, made the right noises, said at the right moments. Meanwhile, my other hand was scrolling through the backup folder. There were more pictures, her and him in a cafe, sharing a slice of cake, her leaning against his shoulder in what looked like a movie theater lobby. A blurred shot where you could barely see their faces, just the shape of him bending down and her mouth tilted up toward his. I ended the call first, said I was tired, told her to come home safe. As soon as the line went dead, I put the laptop aside and just sat there. The room felt smaller, the ceiling lower, the walls closer. My brain started unspooling memories, rewinding the last year like an old film. The first time she mentioned, a new guy at work who's actually competent. How she'd say his name in that casual, dismissive way that was supposed to mean he didn't matter. The extra time she spent choosing outfits on days she had big client meetings. The sudden switch to keeping her phone on silent, even at home. I hadn't wanted to connect the dots, because once you connect them, there's no going back. That night she came home close to midnight. I heard the elevator door, the soft chime, the echo of her footsteps down the hallway, the key turning in the lock. I was in the living room, lights off except for the small lamp in the corner. The blinds were half open, letting in streaks of streetlight. She stepped in, hair damp from the rain, trench coat belted tight around her waist. Her eyes scanned the room, adjusting to the dim light, and landed on me. "Oh," she said, startled, "you're still up." "Couldn't sleep," I answered. She dropped her bag by the door, hesitated, then crossed the room to kiss my forehead. Her lips were cool, carrying the smell of wet pavement and someone else's cologne. "Sorry it got so late," she murmured, already moving toward the bedroom. "You should have gone to bed." "Big report?" I asked. She froze for a fraction of a second, then kept walking. "The biggest," she said over her shoulder. I barely had time to eat. "I'm starving, actually." I watched her open the fridge, rummage, settle on leftovers she'd cooked 2 nights ago. She moved through the kitchen like nothing was wrong, like we were still us. I saw everything differently now. The way she avoided meeting my eyes for too long, the tension in her shoulders, the extra care she took hanging her coat as if neatness could hide guilt. "You have fun?" I asked quietly. She laughed, though nothing was funny. "If by fun you mean spreadsheets and emails, sure." I almost told her then, almost said, "I saw the photos." Almost said, who is he? Almost said, do you realize you're dismantling my life in slow motion? Instead, I just watched her eat in small bites at the counter, the ticking of the clock suddenly too loud. The next few days blurred into a series of sleepless nights. I started waking up before dawn, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing beside me. Sometimes she mumbled in her sleep, names I didn't recognize. Once she said, "Don't worry, he doesn't know," in a voice so clear I wondered if she'd actually spoken aloud, or if my brain was just replaying that message. At work, I was a ghost. I answered emails, sat through meetings, nodded at the right moments, but my real attention was somewhere else entirely. I became an expert at silence, checking our shared phone records in the bathroom stall, seeing the late-night calls to a number saved under delivery, tracking the time gaps between her, still at the office, texts, and the charges from restaurants we'd never been to. Grief doesn't start when everything finally breaks. It starts in these small, private discoveries, where no one sees you and no one consoles you, and the only proof that your life is falling apart is the way your hands shake as you scroll. I finally saw his face in a short video buried in her backups. They were in a hotel room. He was holding the phone, recording them from above as they lay on the bed, still dressed. She was laughing, covering her face with her hand. "Stop, Leo," she said, her voice light in a way I hadn't heard in months. He turned the camera briefly toward himself. Strong jaw, tired eyes, a few days stubble, that easy kind of charm. Leo. Now he had a name. I paused the video on his face and studied him. Was he better looking than me? Younger? Richer? Did it matter? Every time I pictured him, it wasn't jealousy that hit me first. It was this sick, twisting sense of replacement. That the space I thought was mine in her life had been quietly rented out to someone else, and no one had told me. There was one night, about a week after I'd discovered everything, when she left her phone on the coffee table and went to take a shower. The water started running. Steam began to fog the bathroom door. The phone lit up. A message from delivery. "Miss your laugh already. Same time next week." My thumb hovered over the screen. She never put a lock on notifications. Not for him. I opened the conversation. There it was. The history she thought was hidden behind disappearing messages, unknowingly saved in a backup that had synced once when she'd plugged her phone into her laptop after too much wine. Fragments of a story that had run parallel to my life. "I can't stop thinking about last night. You make me feel alive again. He's so oblivious, haha. I wish you were the one I went home to." The word oblivious hit harder than the rest. I scrolled and scrolled until my chest burned, until I got to the first message. "Hey, this is Leo from accounting, right? I think we're stuck in the same meeting hell all week." A joke about boring presentations, shared complaints. Her sending him a photo of her coffee, saying she needed something to survive this day. Then him replying, "You and me both. Maybe we should grab one together sometime." That sometime had turned into a whole new life. I heard the shower cut off. Panic jolted me back into my body. I locked the phone and put it back exactly where she'd left it, as if it were made of glass. She came out in a towel, hair wet, skin flushed from the heat. She smiled at me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You okay?" she asked. "You've been quiet lately." The irony almost made me laugh. Instead, I just looked at her and said, "Yeah. Work's been a lot." Sleepless nights turned into a kind of numb routine. Wake up, pretend, work, pretend, come home, pretend. But beneath the numbness, something else was growing. Not just anger, not revenge. Something like a small, stubborn seed of self-respect pushing through all the confusion. One evening, I got home earlier than usual. The rain had stopped for once, leaving the air heavy and still. The sky was that flat, colorless gray that made everything look washed out. Her shoes were by the door, but the apartment was silent. No TV, no music. I called out her name. No answer. In the bedroom, the closet door was open. Her suitcase, the big one we'd used on our trip to Barcelona, was on the bed, half-packed. Neatly folded clothes, a small toiletry bag, the red dress. For a moment, I just stood there, watching my life rearrange itself without my consent. She walked in from the hallway, startled when she saw me. Her eyes flicked to the suitcase, then back to my face. "You're home early," she said. "So are you," I replied. We stood there, the space between us suddenly full of everything unsaid. "I'm going to stay with a friend for a few days," she said finally. I think we both need some space." A friend, I almost asked if that friend's name was Leo. If the hotel rooms and the secret coffees had just been rehearsals for this moment. Instead, I heard myself ask, is this about us, or about him? Silence, her shoulders dropped, the mask slipped just a fraction. In her eyes something flickered, guilt, fear, relief. "You saw something," she whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She sat on the edge of the bed next to the half-packed suitcase and put her face in her hands. I didn't want you to find out like this, she said. I laughed once, a hollow sound. There's no good way to find out your wife is in love with someone else. She looked up, eyes shining. It's not that simple. It never is, I said. But it's still true. We talked, if you can call it that. Most of it is a blur of half-explanations, how she'd felt lonely, how we'd grown distant, how she hadn't planned for this to happen. At one point I asked, if I hadn't found out, would you have told me? She didn't respond. That was my answer. She left that night with the suitcase. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The echo stayed long after her footsteps faded down the hallway. The apartment felt cavernous, every object suddenly separate from the meaning it used to carry. The coffee mugs, the framed pictures, the dent in the couch cushion where she used to sit. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat in the dark living room, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the faraway sound of traffic, and stared at the door like it might open again if I waited long enough. Days turned into weeks. I saw them once, by accident, on a Saturday afternoon when I'd forced myself to leave the apartment and walk around the city. The sky was threatening rain again, clouds heavy and low. I turned a corner and there they were, across the street. She in that red dress, laughing at something he'd said. He walking too close, his hand just barely brushing hers. They looked normal, like any couple. I froze. The light changed. People moved around me, annoyed I wasn't walking. A car honked. She didn't see me. I watched them disappear into a side street, swallowed by the crowd. Something in me broke and rearranged itself in that moment. The grief was still there, but it shifted. It loosened its grip just enough for another feeling to surface. Not hatred, just clarity. She had chosen him. Whether out of excitement, loneliness, fear, or some mix of all three, she had chosen him. And standing there on that city sidewalk, with the first drops of rain starting to fall again, I realized I had a choice too. I could spend the rest of my life waiting for her to come back. Or I could learn how to live in the quiet she'd left behind. That thought didn't bring peace. Not yet, but it did something more important. It planted a turning point. And it was that barely formed resolve, shaky, fragile, that I clung to weeks later, when without warning she finally knocked on my door again. It was a clear morning when she came back. No rain for once, just pale, washed-out sunlight creeping between the buildings and into the apartment, turning the dust in the air into slow-moving galaxies. I had gotten used to the quiet by then, used to making coffee just for one, used to the echo of my own footsteps on the hardwood floor. The apartment had changed in small ways. Her shoes were gone from the hallway. Half of the closet was empty. The framed photo of us at the beach now sat face down on a shelf, not because I hated it, but because the story it told no longer applied. I was in the kitchen, pouring that first cup of coffee, when the knock came. 3 soft taps spaced evenly. For a second my heart did the old thing, that little leap it used to do when she came home earlier than expected. Then reality caught up. I opened the door. There she was, Lena. She looked smaller. Or maybe it was just that the person standing in front of me didn't match the ghost I'd been arguing with in my head for weeks. Her hair was pulled back in a loose knot, strands falling out around her face. There were shadows under her eyes, the kind that don't come from just one bad night's sleep. She held a small overnight bag at her side, not the big suitcase she'd left with. "Hi," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Hi," I replied. We stood there in the doorway, the boundary between inside and outside suddenly feeling like a chasm. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated. It wasn't punishment, it was self-preservation. Letting her cross that threshold again felt like inviting a storm back into a room I'd finally aired out, but I stepped aside. "Yeah," I said, "come in." She walked past me, her familiar perfume mixing with the smell of coffee. She glanced around, taking in the changes, the missing photos, the cleared space on the dresser, the way the place looked less like ours and more like mine. "You moved things," she said. I shrugged. "Had to." Half of the apartment was a museum. She flinched slightly but didn't argue. We ended up in the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch. The distance between us felt larger than the furniture allowed. "So," I said, wrapping my hands around my mug, "why are you here, Lena?" She stared at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "I made a mistake," she said. "A lot of them." Silence. The city hummed behind the windows. A car alarm chirped once, then stopped. Someone laughed on the street below. "With him?" I asked. "Or with me?" Her eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. "With everything." It would have been easy to give in right there. To let the familiarity of her voice, her face, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, soften all the hard edges of what she'd done. But beneath all of that, the memory of the hotel photos, the messages, the suitcase, lay like a foundation. "What happened?" I asked. She took a deep breath. "We moved in together," she said. Leo and I not long after I left. It felt exciting at first, like I'd stepped into another version of my life. No responsibilities, no old habits. Just this new thing that made me feel, she searched for the word. Younger, I guess, lighter. I could picture it, new apartment, new routines, new inside jokes. And then, I prompted when she fell quiet. And then real life showed up, she said, a bitter smile tugging at her mouth. He wasn't some fantasy anymore. He was just a man with his own moods, his own flaws, his own secrets. I didn't feel sorry for her, not exactly. But there was something uncomfortable about watching her illusions crack in real time, like seeing someone wake from a dream and realize they'd been sleepwalking near a cliff. He started pulling away, she continued, the way I did with you. Staying late at work, hiding his phone, turning things around on me when I asked questions. And all the while I kept thinking, is this what I did to you? Is this what it felt like? The answer was yes, but I didn't say it. She rubbed her hands together as if she was cold. One night, she said, I found messages on his laptop with someone else. I confronted him. He said it was nothing, just flirting, that I was overreacting, that I knew what it was like to be in a complicated situation. The word complicated sat heavy between us. Did you leave? I asked. Eventually, she said, after too many stupid fights and one big blowout where he said, you cheated on your husband with me. What did you think was going to happen? I winced despite myself. She looked at me directly for the first time. I kept thinking about you, she said, about the way you looked the night I left, about the silence. I told myself I'd made the right choice, that what we had was dead, that you'd be better off without me. But every time something went wrong with him, I heard your voice in my head, the way you'd ask if I'd eaten, the way you'd make coffee the way I liked without asking. All the small things I'd decided weren't enough. I took a long breath through my nose, letting it out slowly. Why didn't you call? I asked. I wanted to, she said quietly, 100 times, but I was ashamed and stubborn and scared you'd moved on, or worse, that you hadn't. We sat with that for a moment. There was a part of me that still ached for her, for us, for the version of our life where none of this had happened, for the mornings and the shared routines and the easy familiarity. But there was another part, a newer, harder part, that remembered the sleepless nights, the lies, the way she'd looked right through me while loving someone else in secret. What are you asking for exactly? I said finally. An apology, a second chance, closure. Her chin trembled. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe all of it. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I broke something that doesn't just go back to how it was, but I needed to see you, to say I'm sorry to your face, not in some message, and to ask if there's any part of you that could ever maybe try again. Even if it's not now, even if it takes time. Her words hung in the air like fragile glass. There it was, the question my heart had been both dreading and secretly hoping to hear. Could we try again? I thought about the man I'd been before everything collapsed, trusting, a little naive, certain of us, the man who believed that love, once declared, was a permanent state. I wasn't that man anymore. I don't know who I am with you now, I said, and my voice surprised me with how calm it sounded. I don't know how to look at you and not see all of it. The messages, the hotel rooms, the way you chose him and left me standing in our living room like a placeholder. She flinched, tears finally spilling over. I know, she whispered, and I hate myself for it. You have no idea how much. I have some idea, I said quietly, because I've spent months hating myself, wondering what I did wrong, what I didn't give you, what I could have done differently. You didn't do anything to deserve this, she said quickly. This was me, this was my emptiness, my cowardice, my selfishness. You were good, you were kind, you were there, and I walked away from that because I mistook steadiness for boredom and chaos for passion. The honesty in that hurt more than any excuse would have. We sat there, both of us crying in that quiet, restrained way adults do when they are too tired for dramatics. Leo, I asked after a while, where is he now? She shook her head, laughed softly through her tears. Gone, she said. With her, I think, or whoever's next, it doesn't matter. What we had fell apart the moment it had to face anything real. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. Do you love him? I asked. I don't know anymore, she said. I think I loved what he represented, an escape, a version of myself that didn't feel tired or responsible or predictable, but that version of me turned out to be someone I don't like. Someone who hurts people who didn't deserve it. Her words were heavy, but they matched what studies and stories say about affairs, that they often grow out of a longing for a different self more than a different. Do you still love me? She asked, voice barely audible. The question cut clean through all the noise. I closed my eyes for a second, searching for an answer that wasn't shaped by habit or fear. Part of me does, I admitted. Part of me always will, probably. You're not just my ex-wife or the woman who cheated on me. You're also the girl who fell asleep on my shoulder on the train, the woman who held my hand when my father died, the person I planned a whole life with." She sobbed once quietly, but I continued, "Part of me doesn't trust you, and love without trust is something else, something smaller, something that can't carry the weight of marriage again." We sat in that truth together. It didn't explode. It didn't shatter the room. It just settled like dust on forgotten furniture. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "Leave, stay. Try to be your friend, give you space. I'll do whatever you say." The power in that offer was disorienting. For so long, I'd felt like the one with no choices. Now she was the one waiting. I looked at her, really looked. Not at the woman I had made vows to, not at the woman who had betrayed me, but at the person in front of me, flawed, broken, remorseful, and still somehow familiar. "I don't have an answer yet," I said. "I don't want to make a decision from anger or from nostalgia. If there's any future for us, it has to be built on something honest. That includes my uncertainty." She nodded slowly. "Can I stay for a while?" she asked. "Not like before. Not in our bed, just on the couch. For a few days, I won't push. I don't have anywhere that feels like home right now." The thought of her in the apartment again made something in me recoil. But the idea of her walking out and disappearing forever, without either of us knowing what we could have been on the other side of this, felt incomplete. "You can stay," I said eventually. "For a few days, the couch is yours. But this isn't us getting back together. This is two people sitting in the wreckage, trying to see if anything worth salvaging is left." She exhaled a shaky sound of tentative relief. "Thank you," she whispered. That night I lay in our bed alone. She lay in the living room, a soft outline under a blanket. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathing filtered through the half-open door. We were under the same roof again, but everything had changed. Somewhere between the guilt in her eyes and the ache in my chest, a question began to form, a question too big for that night, too big for my exhausted mind. Could forgiveness exist without reunion? I didn't know. I only knew that in the soft, fragile quiet of that early return, the future was a blank page, and for the first time in months, it was my hand holding the pen. And in that wordless, unfinished space, the decision I would eventually make began to gather like morning light just before dawn. Part 4: The Letting Go. Morning came gently. No alarm, no rush to beat traffic, just the slow brightening of the room as the sun pushed its way between the buildings and into the bedroom. The light was cool, pale, almost hesitant. I lay there for a while, watching the rectangle of brightness creep slowly across the ceiling. The city was already awake, distant engines, a dog barking, someone calling down to a friend from a window. Life continuing, indifferent to little human disasters like mine. I could hear her in the living room, soft movements. The rustle of a blanket, the creak of the couch as she sat up. For a moment, my body reacted the old way, that familiar awareness of another person in the apartment, the small comfort of not being alone. Then memory settled back in and the feeling changed shape. I got up, pulled on a t-shirt, and walked out. She was sitting on the edge of the couch, wrapped in the throw blanket, staring at the floor. Her overnight bag sat untouched by the coffee table. She looked up when she heard me, eyes puffy, hair messy. "Morning," she said, voice rough. "Morning," I replied. I went to the kitchen, started the coffee machine. The simple ritual felt grounding: scoop, pour, press. The smell of coffee filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of rain that still clung to the open window frame from the night before. "Do you want some?" I asked over my shoulder. She hesitated. "Only if you're already making it." "I am," I said. "So do you." "Yes," she said quietly. "Please, the way you used to." I prepared her cup the way I always had: 2 sugars, a little extra milk. My hands moved from muscle memory, even as my mind replayed her saying she'd missed my small habits. When I handed it to her, our fingers brushed. She held the cup with both hands, as if anchoring herself. We sat in silence for a while, each with our coffee. The living room felt different in the morning light, less haunted, more ordinary. "This feels strange," she said eventually. "Because it is," I replied. She nodded, taking a sip. "I thought about what you said last night," she continued. "About trust, about not knowing who you are with me now." I watched the steam rise from my cup. "I thought about something too," I said. "About forgiveness." She looked up, cautious hope flickering in her eyes. "Forgiveness isn't erasing," I said slowly, forming the thought as I spoke. "It's not pretending it didn't happen. It's not agreeing to go back to the way things were, like nothing broke. It's letting go of the need to keep bleeding from the same wound every day." Her eyes filled again. "I don't want to hurt you anymore," she whispered. "You don't get to decide that alone," I said gently. "That's the thing. You chose for both of us when you left. If there's one thing I'm taking back now, it's my choice." She swallowed hard. What are you choosing? She asked. I took a deep breath. The words were already there, waiting. I'm choosing to forgive you, I said. Eventually, fully, even if it takes time. Not because you've earned it, not because what you did is okay, but because I don't want to spend the rest of my life resenting you, or defining myself as the man who was betrayed. Tears slipped down her cheeks. And us, she asked, what are you choosing for us? I looked around the apartments, at the photos that were gone, at the spaces I'd cleared, at the light on the floor. I'm choosing not to rebuild this marriage, I said softly. She stared at me as if the words were taking longer than usual to reach her. You mean? Her voice cracked. I mean we're not getting back together, I said. Not as husband and wife, not in this apartment. The foundation is cracked too deep, Lena. Even if we pour fresh concrete over it, what's underneath doesn't change. We could try to pretend for a while. We might even have good days. But every time you were late, every time your phone lit up, every time something felt slightly off, that old wound would open. And that's not a life I want. Not for me. Not even for you. She shook her head slowly, as if trying to dislodge the reality of it. I came here hoping there might be another chance, she said. I knew it was selfish. I knew I had no right to ask, but I still hoped, even a little. I know, I said, and there was a version of me that wanted to give it, the part that hates endings, that clings. That's afraid of starting over at my age, alone in this apartment with its empty half of the closet. We both smiled weakly at that. But you were right yesterday, I continued. What you did didn't come from something I lacked. It came from a place you have to face on your own. If I take you back, I become part of the story you tell yourself to avoid really looking at that. He forgave me, so maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe we were both at fault, and that's not the truth. She set her coffee down carefully, as if her hands were suddenly too unsteady to hold it. So this is, she couldn't finish the sentence. This is us ending properly, I said. Not with a suitcase in the night and unanswered questions. Not with you running to him and me scrolling through backups in the dark, but with two people sitting at a table, in daylight, saying what needs to be said. She covered her mouth with her hand, a quiet sob escaping. I am so sorry, she said, voice breaking. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't give you back the nights you lay awake or the parts of yourself you doubted, but I need you to know that I see it now, all of it, the damage. The cruelty of my choices. The way I let you carry the confusion alone while I chased something that was never worth what it cost. Her words were messy, imperfect, but they were hers, not rehearsed, not neatly packaged. I believe you, I said. I believe you're sorry. I also believe that sorry doesn't automatically equal another chance. Sometimes sorry is just the most honest ending we get. She nodded, shoulders shaking. What happens now? She asked. Now, I said, we separate officially. We sign what needs to be signed. We divide what needs to be divided. We find new places, new routines. And in time, maybe, if we both still want it, we can be something softer than enemies and more distant than lovers. People who once shared a life and don't have to hate each other to move on. The idea of being friendly exes felt impossible in that moment, but the possibility of not carrying this as a permanent wound felt like something worth working toward. She wiped her face. Do you hate me? She asked. I thought about it. No, I said finally. I don't. I hate what you did. I hate who I was forced to become because of it. I hate the lies and the secrecy and the way you made me feel invisible in my own home. But you, the whole of you, I can't hate you. Loving you for this long doesn't just switch off. It just changes shape. We sat in silence again. The light had moved, now creeping up the wall, making the framed artwork glow at the edges. I'm going to pack a few things, she said eventually. I'll find somewhere else to stay while we figure the paperwork out. I won't just disappear this time. I'll answer calls. I'll sign what needs signing. I'll do my part. Okay, I said. She stood, moved around the apartment with the familiarity of someone who had once moved through it half asleep. She paused in the bedroom doorway, hand resting on the frame. So many mornings, she said softly, more to herself than to me. I used to watch you sleep and feel safe. I don't know when I stopped valuing that. She disappeared into the room. I stood by the window watching the street. The sky was clearing, patches of blue breaking through the clouds. The city didn't look any different. Same buses. Same pedestrians, same messy, ordinary life. After a while, she came back with her bag, now slightly fuller. She'd taken a few clothes, personal items, a couple of books. The apartment already felt lighter, and somehow heavier too. She stopped a few feet from the door. Can I hug you? She asked. The question pierced me. I hesitated, then nodded. She stepped forward, wrapping her arms around me carefully, like she was afraid I might break. For a moment, my body remembered how it felt to hold her without all this distance. All the years we'd spent sharing warmth, sharing space. I let myself feel it, not as a promise, as a goodbye. When we pulled apart, her eyes were red but calmer. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, even the ending, especially the ending." I nodded, not trusting my voice. She opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and turned back one last time. "You were home," she said, voice shaking. "All along. I just didn't know how to be there with you. I hope one day you find someone who does." The door closed. The sound was soft but final. I stood there, hand on the knob, breathing in the emptiness she'd left behind. The apartment was quiet, but it was a different quiet now. Not the heavy, suffocating silence of secrets and suspicion. A cleaner quiet, raw, yes, but honest. I walked through each room slowly. The living room, the kitchen, the bedroom with its half-empty closet. Every empty space felt like a question. What now? Who are you without her? What kind of life can you build with what's left? I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time since everything collapsed, I wasn't afraid of the questions. I opened the windows wider, letting in more light, more noise, more of the world. The air smelled like exhaust and coffee from the shop downstairs, and the faint hint of rain still drying from the night before. I made another cup of coffee. For myself this time, just one mug on the counter. I carried it to the small table by the window, the one we used to crowd with 2 laptops and mismatched notebooks, and sat down. Outside, the city moved on, people rushing, people slowing. People carrying their own invisible heartbreaks and quiet victories. I sipped my coffee and let the morning fill the room. She had chosen another man. She had chased a life that dissolved in her hands and left her with nothing but regret. She had come back not to reclaim what we were, but to face what she'd done. And I had chosen finally to let go, not with drama, not with revenge, just with a slow, steady acceptance that some stories don't end with reunion. Some end with 2 people walking away in different directions, carrying the lessons like invisible scars. The rain had always meant regret. The empty rooms had meant loneliness. But in the soft, honest light of that morning, something shifted. The quiet didn't feel like an absence anymore. It felt like space. Space to breathe, space to heal. Space maybe one day to love again, differently, wisely, without losing myself. I lifted the mug, held it in both hands, and whispered into the empty apartment, not as a plea, not as a curse, but as a simple truth. "I forgive you, and I'm finally choosing me." The city hummed in response. The light warmed my face, and for the first time in a long time, the silence felt like the beginning of something instead of the end. The silence felt like the beginning of something instead of the end.